guys, it's Cece, and today I am going to be doing a tag video for you all. This is the mid-year book Freakout tag. Now, I know I'm a couple of weeks late in doing this. It was supposed to be at the very beginning of July, but you're just gonna have to go with me on this one. I've been really busy, so I'm doing it now. I was tagged to do this video by Rachel, aka Peace Love Malia Joy, I think, and I'm really excited to do it. This is an original tag, though, created by Read Like Wildfire and Eli Jane, and they originally created it as a blog post, but it was converted into a tag for BookTube, which I am doing now. So I have a lot to cover, so I'm just gonna get started. So the first challenge is to pick the best book that you've read so far in 2015, and this is going to be a theme with a lot of things. I picked 2 instead of 1, but just work with me. So the first one that I picked was Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fanny Flagg. I've talked about this a lot. It's a really, really excellent fiction novel, and it's got a great atmosphere and really, really wonderful characters. I read this book in the spring and absolutely fell in love with it. It's definitely one of my favorite books this year. Definitely one of my favorite books that I've ever read, so absolutely fantastic. And the other book that I think is a favorite for 2015 is None of the Above by I.W. Gregorio. Again, I've talked about this book a lot. This is a book that I picked up in May. It is about a girl who discovers she is intersex. It has one of the most beautiful covers of books that I've gotten, and it was a really, really fantastic book exploring some diversity issues that I haven't read anything about before. The second challenge was to pick your favorite sequel of 2015, and that is Monsters of Men by Patrick Ness, the third book in the Chaos Walking trilogy. I read A Knife of Never Letting Go and The Ask and the Answer last year at the end of December, and then Monsters of Men was the first book that I read this year. It was how I started off the year, and it is one of the best books, period, that I've ever read, one of the best sequels, one of the best end of series that I've ever read. Monsters of Men was absolutely incredible. And the third challenge was to pick new release from 2015 that I haven't read yet but really want to, and there are a few of these, so I'm just gonna quickly list a couple. I really would like to read Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, which is a graphic novel. She's also one of the creators of the Lumberjanes comics, which I read earlier this year. I would love to read A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. And also, I'd really love to read The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Ahdieh. The fourth challenge is to list some of the books I'm most excited to be released for the rest of 2015. Again, picked 3. But the books that I am most excited about that are coming out in the next couple of months are Queen of Shadows, which is the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. Welcome to Night Vale by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner. I love the Welcome to Night Vale podcast, and I think it's really amazing and so exciting that they're doing a book, especially because this book is about 2 women as opposed to being about Cecil or even Cecil and Carlos. So it's just a further exploration into that world. The illustrated edition of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I am going to be in England when this book is released, which means I'm probably going to be getting the British edition. I need it. The 5th challenge that I had to do was to pick my biggest disappointment. Now, this book I technically read at the very beginning of July, so it wasn't quite in the first half of the year, but this is the best book that qualified, so we're just gonna sneak it in there anyway, and that was Unspeakable by Abby Rushton. I have been so excited about this book. I have desperately wanted to read it, and it was at the top of my LGBT want to read list, and I just hated it. I will talk more about some of my specific problems with this in my July wrap-up, but I was really disappointed with Unspeakable, unfortunately. However, challenge number 6 was to choose my biggest surprise, and for this I picked 2 books, which is interesting because they're both sort of about similar themes, but I was really surprised I like both of them, probably because I don't read a lot of horror, and I've read a few horror books this year, and it keeps surprising me that I like them. I don't know why it keeps surprising me. But the first of those is Horns by Joe Hill. I read Horns back in spring, and really, really liked it. Also, the other book that I was super surprised at how much I loved was Phantoms by Dean Koontz, which was the last book that I read in June. I've never read any Dean Koontz, and again, this one had a lot of themes around the devil, which is really weird that both of these books honestly surprised me. But I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars and absolutely tore through it. So this book totally took me by surprise. Challenge number 7 was to pick your favorite new author, and this could mean either your favorite debut author who had their first book this year, or a favorite author that was new to you, and I chose to do one of each. So my favorite author that was new this year that debuted a book was I.W. Gregorio of None of the Above. Again, since this was one of my favorite books this year, clearly I'll be reading more by I.W. Gregorio. She definitely impressed me with this book. And my favorite writer that has been around for a while, but I just sort of read this year and absolutely fell in love with and read a lot of different stuff by him, was Gene Luen Yang. He writes graphic novels, so this year I read all of his Avatar: The Last Airbender comics and absolutely loved them, and then a little bit later I read his series Boxers and Saints, which I absolutely adored and desperately want my own copies of. I just think that he's a really interesting writer, and I've loved everything that I've read that he's written. Challenge number 8 was to choose your newest fictional crush. Now, here's the thing about your newest fictional crush. I don't get crushes on book characters. I haven't in a while. It was something that used to happen in high school, but characters don't quite affect me that way anymore. It doesn't really happen. So I picked a couple of characters. I picked one boy and one girl, but it wasn't even necessarily that I had, developed a crush on them. I just ended up really appreciating these characters and thought that they would be very good significant others for certain people, but that's pretty much it. And the first of those, the male newest crush that I found, was Todd from the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness. Again, I only read the 3rd book this year, but I'm counting it, and I think Todd goes through the most in Monsters of Men, so I'm gonna apply it there anyway. And the girl I chose was Nehemia from the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I've already talked about the series again today also, but I think Nehemia was a really interesting character, and she is a really cool character just in terms of the series. Challenge number 9 was to choose your newest favorite characters, and again for this one I chose one boy and one girl, and the male newest fictional favorite character that I chose was Mark Watney from The Martian by Andy Weir. I read this book in June and absolutely adored it, but Mark Watney is really what makes this book because he is the narrator and he's extremely funny. He's got this awesome gallows sense of humor, but he's also really, really smart, and I just completely rooted for him, and every now and then he would just do something really hilarious. I love Mark Watney. Okay. And my female new favorite character is Selena from the Throne of Glass series. Just because from the 3 books that I've read, because again I haven't read Assassin's Blade, from the 3 books I've read, she's come so far as a character where I sort of liked her in Throne of Glass. I was intrigued by her because I don't think she's like a lot of other young adult female lead characters, and it intrigued me. But by the time you get to Heir of Fire, I just completely have fallen in love with Selena, which is why I'm so eager to get my hands on Queen of Shadows, because I think she's a really interesting, cool character. Challenge number 10 is to choose a book that made you cry, and for this one, I'm going to show you a book I've already shown you already, and that is Monsters of Men by Patrick Ness. This book, I've already talked about this book in a video I did called Books That Made Me Cry, because this book made me cry really, really hard. This is one of the hardest I've cried during a book, is during the last, 50 pages of this book, maybe. And challenge number 11, to bring it back around, was to choose a book that made me happy. And for that one, I chose Almost Like Being in Love by Steve Kluger. I read this book a few weeks ago, back in June. I also did a review of this book, which you can check out here. And this book makes me super, super happy. It's a gooey, gooey love story that made me smile from start to end. The challenge for number 12 is to pick your favorite book to film adaptation that you've seen this year. I haven't seen any new ones, honestly, this year that I've loved, or I don't even know if I've seen any this year, but I picked The Green Mile, which is an adaptation of a series of novellas by Stephen King, because I'd already seen this movie, and I'd already read the series of novellas, but I rewatched it this year and absolutely remembered why it's one of my favorite book-to-film adaptations. I think this is one of the most faithful ones that exists. I love this movie. Stephen King movies, sometimes they work, and when they work spectacularly well, like with Stand By Me or Misery. And then sometimes they don't, and we won't talk about those. But because I haven't really seen a new one this year, I thought I would change this to also include Best Book-to-Stage Adaptation, because this year I read Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. I saw the stage production of Fun Home a couple of months ago when I was still at school because one of my classes took me, and absolutely loved it. I cried from start to finish. I think it was absolutely amazing. The songs are fantastic, in particular Ring of Keys, which I've listened to a lot of times, and I cry every time I listen to the song, to be honest with you. For number 13, the challenge was favorite. It's supposed to be favorite review you've done, but the booktube version of this is to choose your favorite video that you've done. Honestly, my favorite that I had the most fun filming this year was definitely my first sentence challenge, because I got to film that one with my sister, and it was the first time my sister agreed to film something with me. There might be others in the future, and it was just really fun to hang out and have fun with her, and that was just a lot of fun to film. For me, like, I didn't even care if other people enjoyed it because I had so much fun filming. Challenge 14 was to pick the most beautiful book you received or bought this year. I chose one of each again. My most beautiful book that I think that I bought this year, honestly, was The Martian by Andy Weir. Again, I think that this is an absolutely gorgeous cover. I ended up taking a picture of this when I was doing my book photo challenge, because I just think it's absolutely gorgeous and totally eye-catching. And my favorite book that I received as a gift, I don't have with me here, but I did receive it, I own it, is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sainz. I really liked this book. I read it in April, I think. But honestly, I think that the book cover just is absolutely beautiful. I think that this is one of the most beautiful books that I have, period, let alone that I've received this year. And finally, the last challenge, number 15, is what books do I want to read for the second half of the year? This is a difficult one because I'm going to read a couple of books in the next month or so that are on my TBR shelf, but then after that, I'm going to be strictly using my Kindle because I don't want to be buying a bunch of books while I'm overseas, because that's just gonna rack up some costs, and then I'll have to ship them, and it'll be a disaster. But I'm reading some books on Kindle. I got the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy by Laini Taylor. I've heard a ton about this series, and I'm glad that I finally got to buy it. I also purchased Vicious by V.E. Schwab. That is on my Kindle to read later this year. And one of the other ones that I got was Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles. Hugely talked about on BookTube. Can't believe I hadn't gotten to it yet, especially because it's a retelling, and I love retellings. And then a couple of books that I want to read in the next month or so before I leave include The True Adventures of Niccolo Zen by Nicholas Christopher. I want to read this before I go because it takes place in Italy, and I want to read it before I go to Italy. I also really want to read The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas so that I can read all of the existing Throne of Glass books. This is a bind-up of a bunch of Throne of Glass novellas. Definitely want to get to this next month. And the last book that I absolutely have to get to this year, next month, as soon as I finish reading Harry Potter, is Zeros by Scott Westerfeld, Margot Lanigan, and Deborah Biancotti, because this was an arc that I received that is coming out in September, so I have to read it before I go so that I can do a review for you guys. I definitely want to get to this book soon. In fact, I'm planning on getting to it at the end of July because I am doing a readathon, and this is one of the books that I'm counting for a challenge in my readathon. So that is the end of the mid-year book Freakout tag. I can't believe I'm over halfway through this year. Like, we're coming in on the middle of July. That's crazy to me. This summer is going by surprisingly quickly, and it's freaking me out a little bit because I have to get through Harry Potter. I'm really excited about how much I've gotten done, about how many great books that I've read so far this year, and I had a lot of fun doing this, so thanks again to Rachel for tagging me. I'm not going to tag anyone because, again, I'm kind of late, and I don't want to spring a mid-year book tag on people when it's no longer quite the middle of the year, but if you guys want to do this tag, I welcome you to. That'd be really fun. This was really fun. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing all the books that I've read. If you've read some of the books that I've read this year, what did you think of them? And what are some books that you want to read in the second half of the year? Let me know in comments. I'd love to hear about it. And I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye!